I'm going to
Sorry.
drop off. I'll leave you guys to it. Have fun.
Bye, Stephen.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the country and in the world. Team of four today. No, Stephen, we've managed to get rid of, he's not able to join us today. But today we have in the studio myself, Ian, from represent Idera, Yellowfin, and a few other brands as well. Rob Jones from Yellowfin. Hello, Rob. And so Montana Mendy, also from Yellowfin. And Maria, who I'm told wears two hats, but is actually wearing zero hats. Montana has one hat, and is Yellowfin and Minera.net as well. That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
I got it right, and I remembered it was Ohio as well. I'm so impressed with myself. I'm really pleased. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of slides. Thank you to the people saying hi. I'm not going to try and say their username, but Susvolog, okay. Oh, vlog, okay. Well, I'm guessing it's some kind of YouTubey person, but hello. Thanks for saying hi. We're here every week, same time, same place. We call this the Analytics Coffee Club, and we get as many puns in as possible about coffee in titles. I think Stephen's trying to outdo himself. Let me just mute a few things because my computer is trying to tell me about things I really don't care about. I'm going to turn this one up as well. I am surrounded by things that make noises. I know most of you can't hear them because of the noise cancellation, but drives me crazy. So what we'll do is start by sharing our slides and just get right into it. So let me just pick my screen and make sure that we go down the side because that seems to work better. Like this one. There you go. That's good. And today is 11th of June when we're recording this. And the title we've chosen is not really coffee related. It's a bit of a letdown, really. Rather, it was more kind of, pun related. But charts, and more charts. That's it, really. I think that kind of sums up what we're aiming for. And just to remind you, every Thursday we're live on the YouTube channel. I'm going to put the QR code up in the top right-hand corner later. But also, if you want to know where we're based, you can go here and make that go over to the other side. Like so, out of the way, so it doesn't cover us up. Yellowfin BI, this is the product that we're talking about as well. We've got a bunch of regular people. That is most of us that are here today. Stephen also is regular as well. And we get some guest presenters come along from various organizations to do with business intelligence. We're not trying to do this as a kind of lecture. It's not really a tutorial, although, there are things you can learn from it. It's more a case of conversation and stuff like that. And I try and keep out of the way as much as possible and let the others get on with it. People that we've got listed here are the regulars, so to speak. Stephen Ball, who is not with us, he's still around, but he's just not with us today. It's like a metaphor for he's gone away to a different place, but he really is in a different place. He's not metaphorically gone in a different place. Robert Jones, who introduced earlier on, Maria as well, Montana, and myself, and we're here fairly regularly. So let's start off with the agenda for today. We're going to be talking about choosing the right chart. Now, I know that sounds like, well, I just click on one that looks beautiful, but actually it's a bit more complex than that, and we're going to go and talk about that subject. Dashboard design fundamentals. If you've tried to get information together in the form of a dashboard, you can look at some examples that are out there on the net. The places like Canva, for example, or Figma have some very good designs that can inspire you. And in fact, I saw one yesterday for the public safety in the United States, which is absolutely gorgeous. Maybe I should have shown it here, but it's really incredible dashboard design. But your dashboard for your business is quite, what's the word I'm looking for? It's really specific to your needs. What's the point in having a dashboard if you're not, visualizing the information that's meaningful to you? And even if you're in the same line as someone else, what they care about might not necessarily be exactly what you care about. And the dashboard is really a way of saying this is the stuff that we think is important to us. Now, it could be metrics and things like that, or it could be some other information along the lines of, you want to.
I think the analogy with the dashboard in your vehicle is really actually is a good one, because when you think about what's the dashboard for in your car, it's there to show you the stuff you really need to see, and not there to distract you with all kinds of rubbish that you really don't want to see, which would take your eyes off the road and have a nasty accident.
Like the oil light,
exactly.
the check engine light, which is everybody hates, but actually when it comes on, you really need to know it's come on and told you something bad. And then we're going to talk about colors, comparison, and storytelling, interactive exploration. Sounds like we're going to go spelunking down a cave or something. I think we're all remaining seated, but you never know. And then Q&A roundup, and then we'll talk about what comes next after that. So should we start off? I'm not sure who's taking what sections and talking about things, because I've only just seen these slides. We're going to talk about choosing the right chart. We'll kick off with that. So who wants to start us off on charts?
You want to dive in, Maria?
It's okay, again. Yeah, I can get started with this.
I can talk about color selection if you like.
Well, it's a good point of what we are, what you mentioned, Ian, in terms of it's just not like a pretty chart. The idea or the objective is to answer a question to help drive a decision. So, and we as well need to differentiate between the software that is the BI and really this data visualization. So it could be even like a mock-up or something you draw to help you get to that decision. So, of course, the simplicity plays a very good role in it. Really, when you spend so much time trying to read the legend, trying to figure it out, what this chart is trying to, what's really the message of this chart, then it's a very good point to say that the chart has failed the purpose, because you're just spending too much time trying to process what's the message. So there's a few points we can actually share in terms of good practices and tips to develop a good chart. So I'm not sure if we want to just go to the next slide very quickly, Ian, because Yellowfin actually has these, I will say, very nice guide to help you to choose the best chart in terms of what you're trying to show to the user, the message that or the question you're trying to answer. So of course, if you're trying to compare time, well, the best thing probably is to go with a time series chart, like a line chart or a column chart that allows you to do like comparison over time. Let's say if you want to well, we are very familiar, everybody that was here, with all the stats and summary, like means and standard deviations that we used to calculate when we were in high school. And sometimes a table to visualize that is fine, but some other times we need like a scatter plot to tell us the kind of the complete story. So we just need to figure out really what we are trying to do, what we want to, what message we're trying to convey to the audience. And that's another good point, like what audience we're trying to reach. There's, in terms of Yellowfin as well, of course, there's the Canva, the Yellowfin kind of auto chart that at the very beginning, it kind of identifies which fields you have, and it kind of suggests a chart. That doesn't mean that it's always going to suggest the best chart, but it's a starting point, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it will basically follow the rules that are on this slide, weren't they?
Yeah.
In terms of figuring out what's going to fit, and sometimes I think it looks a little bit at cardinality of the dimensions as well. But yeah, it has a good
cardinality of the dimensions. Now, there's a man who's had a very expensive education. You can tell that. What would you mean? What, if you were to explain that in slightly simplified form, what would you say by it?
Well, so we touched on dimension a couple of weeks ago. For those who weren't here, it's the thing that you want to analyze by. So it might be, say, brand, for example, and the cardinality of the brand dimension would be, well, how many brands have you got? If you've got 4 of them, you can have some kind of chart. If you've got 30 of them, as we'll see a bit later, you might need to think again about what kind of chart you use, or take some approach to reducing that number down a bit to make it a bit more manageable.
I mean, in simple terms, cardinality means the practicality of how much you can show across on a number of a range or something like that. It's a great phrase, by the way. I mean, it's I know I'm slightly ribbing you for your education, but
Robert is smarter than all of us.
Sorry, say that again.
Robert's smarter than all of us. So that's okay. He can use words like that.
Now, you see, don't fall for the British accent, because you see, I'm immune to this whole, oh, he's got a British accent, therefore he's like X number of IQ points higher. I don't know whether you know this, Rob, but if you come to the United States, immediately you will be assumed to be a genius, even if you're actually, you know, really lost your way at the age of 14 and gave up on education altogether. The minute you speak with a British accent, they just assume straight away you've had an Oxford education, you've had a Cambridge education, or something like that. You're a smart guy. It's true. Right. Well, in your case, yeah. I lived near Oxford.
It's interesting that Maria was talking about some of those diagrams and things from high school stats, and that's maybe a difference between certainly Brits of my generation and maybe our American counterparts, because things like box and whisker diagrams were not something I ever came across until I was at I didn't even do them at university. So it was working in data science at the John Lewis partnership many years later. It was the first time I came across them. But so I mean, and like many of those diagrams, that they are great if you know what they mean, but you need to be very sure that whoever's going to consume your charts actually does know what they mean if you're going to use them.
well, actually, in a way, that brings up a good point, because the trouble with BI is that a lot of people say, oh, it's showing charts. They do actually think that a lot of a BI product would be just a bunch of charts and that's it. But actually, business intelligence is actually much more scientific than that. And the way that you represent the data, as you pointed out, once you really get into it, you start to realize that there's a lot of different ways to show or represent data in a way that makes it more consumable, easily consumable. That's the whole point of a chart, is to take a bunch of numbers and make it edible in a bite-sized chunk, rather than pour through sheets and sheets of numbers. And having worked on BI products myself years ago, the hardest part was trying to pick a representation that worked for the end user, the person who's going to consume the data, but still actually be truthful. Because there is a way of producing a chart that looks great, but actually is absolutely useless, because the way you've aggregated it together, or the series you've picked, just basically, it's not a lie, but it's almost one of these things where it's a lie by admission. You've either represented the numbers in politicians love to do it all the time, don't they, with the statistics and things like that. Oh, we've had 97% more police being hired or something like that. It works both sides of the pond, by the way, not just US or UK. All politicians say 97% increase in hiring, but what they don't mention is the 200% decrease in retention of staff, and they're losing staff. So actually, there's a net decrease and things like that. Statistics can always be manipulated in ways that show the story in a way that helps people. Business intelligence should really be much more about giving the facts for people to make decisions, and the facts and the decisions should go together in a way that's useful and meaningful, not trying to sway public opinion or something like that. And, well, I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you're trying to convince someone, hey, my department's not doing as bad as you think it is, But okay, so just going back to the charts, Maria, we were saying here about considering things like the general audience and column of bars and things like that. Where do we go from there? Where were we up to?
So really, once we have identified, okay, the best visualization type, and what's really the message, we want to make something more obvious in terms of, okay, certain category, I want my audience to pay attention to that one. There's a few different tips we can do this. We can use different forms or shapes. So if we are using lines, maybe we can make it a little bit thicker. If we are using colors, maybe we can highlight it somehow. So that's another kind of the next step after we have chose the right or the best visualization for that question we want to answer. As well, in terms of, okay, now we have the chart and everything that is surrounding the chart, there's as well a few best practices we need to follow. So in terms of, okay, what background are we using? Many times we see these black backgrounds or really intense. So the best practice is really to just use neutral colors, because the background is not really communicating anything meaningful to the user. And what we saw in the screen really takes a lot of process in our mind to for us to understand. So what we really want to do is to try to just keep it simple, to show in the screen the important information that is really communicating something to the end user. As well, sometimes we have seen these 3D charts that, yes, maybe they could look very cool, but as well, it takes a little bit more of process for us to figure it out, because for us, we need to kind of, okay, get rid of the shade of the 3D to be able to see exactly which line or which percentage it's showing. Another thing to consider is, for example, the data labels. So sometimes they could cause a little bit of noise, and with tools like Yellowfin, we could easily show them in the tooltip. So when we are hovering over, it will show us the detailed information. But if we really want to show things like the labels, like probably a best practice will be to show them inside the bars if we are using a bar chart, because for our mind as well, we will take it, if we show it outside, like an extension of the line. So just kind of considering how we think or how we process this information can help us to do a very good design. Yeah, sorry, you had any comment?
Yeah, well, actually, I'd like to show. I'm springing this on all of you because I didn't mention this before we started, and,
Sure.
and maybe I should have done. But I saw a site yesterday which I thought was very interesting, and funny enough, is quite relevant for what we're talking about. And it is called Hazard Now. It's a website, and let me just get rid of this and hit F11. So it is a website. And it's not, as far as I'm aware, they're not using anything to do with Yellowfin. But I thought this was a very interesting thing, because it actually, just as you said it, immediately made me remember this site, because you said a lot of times you have a very dark background. And this here is an example of a website that is kind of attractive in some ways. It shows a lot of information. It's a public website. It's called hazardnow.com. And if you go to dashboard, you can go and have a look at it. And what it does is, you know, the United States, three out of 4 of us live in the United States. It's tornado season right here in Texas, and I don't think Ohio has a tornado season, but I'm sure they have some other hazards. And California has things like fire hazards and things like that. And the warmer the weather gets,
earthquakes.
Earthquakes, yes. In fact, there was an earthquake in the Philippines, 7.5 the other day. But there are different types of hazards. I thought this was very interesting because actually this is kind of related to BI, but it's not business intelligence. But my criticism of this particular chart, which kind of makes sense, you know, I see what they're trying to show, but it's an example here, I think, of showing a lot of information without actually imparting any information. Because what does that mean? For example, this here, if I click on it, then it tells me, you know, the details, but at a glance, it doesn't really mean much. There's a whole bunch of dots and numbers and things like that, and there's some statistics down here. But even on my screen, close up, the text here is actually very difficult to read. If I highlight it, you can see it, but the choices that they've made in terms of design, as a graphic designer, you know, I specialize in user interface design. That's one of the things I kind of do a lot of. In fact, there you go. I've actually triggered something. In fact, I can't even highlight that because of the way it's working. But that text choice here, it doesn't really, it doesn't give you any information except the fact it is saying, you can just about see it, wildfire hotspots, and I can't read the rest of it, 48-hour hotspots, that's what that says. Almost impossible to read even close up on my screen. Now, this particular screen is a 1920 by 1080 screen because I use it for broadcast, but even if I put it on my 4K or my 2K monitor, very difficult to read. Great infographic, fantastic website, very full of respect for what they're doing. You know, alerts in here. But as a BI dashboard or as a dashboard, I think you could poke a lot of holes in, you know, what they did here. It's almost like tornado warning. That's not Texas. No, that's fine. It's not near me. But you know, it's great, but it's overkill. And it's actually in some ways, and I apologize to the designers of this board because I'm going to be rude about it, but it is a triumph of beautiful design over practicality. You know, it looks good, it's pretty, but practical. The whole point of a dashboard should be to be able to impart the information to the end user, to make it accessible, to make it something that you can immediately or at least easily consume the information. These labels down here, if I was to have a conversation with them about user interface design, they can email me. My email's at the bottom of the screen. But if they ever want to have a discussion about user, I'm joking by the way. If they ever want to have a discussion about user interface design, that's the first thing I would pull out, is that a dashboard, yes, you want it to be attractive, but it's useless if it doesn't actually show you the information in a way that is easily consumed. And there's an example of a great looking dashboard, but you know, you kind of
it's interesting, and it is quite a nice example, as you say, because think about why it is as it is. And I think my guess is the problem is they set out and said, what can we build which will be interesting to just about anybody, and the temptation, if you do that, is to include as much information as possible. You set the context immediately. Well, okay, it's probably an American audience, so it's the whole of the US, but at that level, how many people are really interested in things that are happening on the other side of the US? It's like, you know, natural hazards are most interesting when they're on your doorstep.
We all have families and stuff, so yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. So there may be some argument, but the point I'm making really is about understanding the context of your users and saying, right, well, if you know that all your users are actually in one state or one city or whatever, you would start with a view that it was not the whole of the US. You'd start with something zoomed in a bit, so it was focused on the things that were really of interest interest to them.
Yeah.
The other thing that struck me is they'd used colors for all those charts, and it's like, well, you know what, if you've got that much information, you probably don't really want to make the stuff that's just ordinary orange. Yeah, I'm assuming that probably means it's sort of okay-ish, but you know,
I don't actually know, because
I'm not sure, but
there's no legend here that tells me.
Your best practice would usually be to make sure the stuff that you're not trying to highlight should be uniform, and then only highlight the things that are actually out of the ordinary. So, you know, your stuff that's like, God, you really need to know about this, make it red or whatever. But if it's just kind of ticking along there and you can see it if you really want to, then leave it in white or grey or something that doesn't leap out at you, just so that the things that are important do leap out at you. But yeah, it's
I mean, what it does here is it relies on you to click on something to understand, because the legend, I don't see the legend anywhere. I'm a certified weather spotter. Okay, so I take an interest in tornadoes and stuff like that, and I report it back to the National Weather Service and things like that as well. And I recognize what these are. These are, you know, thunderstorm warning boxes. In the United States, thunderstorms make British weather look very tame. Trust me. There are thunderstorms that we have here that are really quite something to see. But the ones that I would really want to know about, yes, I get the severe thunderstorms. That means you could have golf ball size hail, for example. Imagine hail that size coming at you at 140 miles an hour, you know, down from the sky. It's bad news. And if you're outside, it's actually life-threatening, you know, if you get caught.
like baseball size, not golf ball size.
Oh yeah, I mean, they've had them baseball size just last week here. And then you see lots of roofers. I was speaking to a roofer the other day, and I said, you're like me. When I see the storms, I'm like, yay, storms. And he's like, yeah, we go, yay, storms, because now there's something going to make a lot of money. But I guess they have a dashboard like this which tells them where to go, and, you know, hey, did your roof get damaged in the storm? It's weird. But anyway, yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting off the track here, but again, I love this site. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be critical about it. I think it's absolutely, you know, useful that we have something like this. I think it's a public thing that's done, not from a city or a government agency, but actually some volunteers. But I would say, from a charts and graphs point of view, yeah, there's some things that I would say they would probably need to take a look at. So yeah, it was just fortuitous that it came
I think that's right. I think that, you know, the parting thought on that one is that a dashboard is focused to a specific task, or should be focused to a specific task. That one isn't. I mean, that's more a portal into all kinds of information, isn't it? And they look quite similar. A portal and a dashboard do have a lot of points in, you know, visually quite similar. But a portal can be a very general thing, whereas a dashboard, I think, should always be focused on a particular task or a particular interest, something, you know, maybe a responsibility area, that where, you know, it's just the stuff that's relevant to some particular context. Otherwise, you know, you don't know what to put in it, they don't know what's important, and you don't really, as a dashboard designer, if you don't know what the person is, your users are going to use it for, then you've got a pretty tough task to figure out what to put in it.
Yeah. It's funny, because that kind of leads us on to the next section, really, which is about designing for understanding, which you know, isn't that just the case, really? I think that, you know, as I was sort of saying when we were critiquing that, it's great and everything, but you've got to have your end users able to understand what you're showing, and sometimes that means you've got a key, you know, down the side, or a legend, explaining what's going on, and that particular one doesn't have a legend or a key of any description whatsoever. It's a very beautiful graph, and I love the web page. I think it's a very good design. But if you take just our slide here as an example, good contrasting colors, high visibility. If you were to run this through an AI and ask it to critique it from a visual disabilities point of view, it actually do quite well. It would probably complain a little bit about the coffee background, because subtly at high res you can see that the coffee background is bleeding through into the text, and that sometimes gives you a thumbs down in terms of accessibility for people with visual disabilities. But overall, I think the slide is perfect. I think the spacing of the text, the size of the text, the contrasting colors, and the overall theme from a user interface point of view and a UI designer point of view, I think it works very well. So does that dashboard, the has and now one, is that been designed for understanding, or has that been designed for visual appeal? I think it may have probably had a previous iteration that might have been more designed for understanding. I don't know. And again, I think they're doing a great job. I don't want to be too critical, but if you're going to put a website out in public, you know, it kind of invites the opportunity for someone to say, here's how you could improve it. Okay, experts. I don't know how to refer you to you collectively, yellowfin people. So designing with the dashboard canvas in mind, a practical dashboard design template, consistent layouts. Maria, because you've put some slides in here, shall we go to the next slide, or do we want to hang on this one?
I did, and actually the first one that if we can go to the next one,
Okay.
because it's showing really an example of bad dashboard design, and we can start talking about some of the best practices and then go to the next one and see a good dashboard design. So as we were saying or mentioning at the beginning, a dashboard is going to tell a little bit more of a story. And there are certain tips or best practices to design this. So usually what we show at the very top is like a summary or these kind of KPIs that it will give you a very quick view of what's going on. Something similar to the page you were showing before, Ian, though they were in the left-hand side. I mean, that's a good idea. It's kind of giving you that quick overview. But as well, we need to add context, right? Because you weren't able to see the title of each KPI, so we were a little bit lost there. So it's good to have them at the very front row with a good context of what it's really meaning. Maybe we can even kind of compare it to the last period or say really more what it is. Then usually in the middle, we have like the core trends, maybe sales over time, something that kind of give us a bit of more idea of what it has been happening or what that specific metric, how it has been behaving in the last maybe quarter or so on. So as you can see with these comments, we kind of started to see what's wrong with this particular dashboard. And then usually at the bottom, we have more details, kind of information. Maybe if we need to show a table detail, we will have it there. Another kind of idea when you have the flexibility that we have in Yellowfin is to use a drill through. So maybe we have a certain KPI, you click on it and it will show you the details. So you don't need to have everything on the dashboard. That's another thing that you need to consider. Of course, the audience, it's very important to know, because it's going to be very different, the design for a dashboard that is only for executive people, that they just need to know the summary, that, for example, to an analyst or an operational person, they need to know more detail. So that's another thing to consider there. And you were also talking about accessibility and disability, how we can as well design for that. And Yellowfin has this very cool feature that is the code mode. Actually, recently we work with a company that they needed to make their dashboard more accessible for people. So we just use the code mode for everything, because the titles need to be in certain fonts or with all this kind of HTML page that you got in the code mode. So we basically designed it with that to be able to pass these guidelines, basically. So that's something important to consider, that it's very cool in Yellowfin, that feature that allows you to as well be able to design for accessibility. A lot of more things from this dashboard that you're showing here to consider. It's We need to as well be very consistent, something similar to what Rob was mentioning in terms, if we are using colors for something, they need to be meaningful. So we know that the green usually it's used when something is positive, when something grew. So if our sales this quarter are increasing, probably we're going to show a green number. The red usually means something went wrong or it's negative. And maybe we can have a few more colors in terms of our color scheme for that specific company to fit. And many times these dashboards are embedded, so it needs to be clean and it needs to fit with the branding of our company. So we recommend like 3-4 different colors. Do not kind of use 10 or more, because it's yeah, then again it's going to be a lot of information and we're not going to be short of what we are looking for. As well, we have these images in Yellowfin, the image repository that we can reuse and make them consistent as well with our color scheme, and just keep it simple so everybody is using these ones. Another thing that we as well do is to kind of keep a template of a dashboard, because what happens many times is that we have a lot of BI developers and everybody ends up having a different style, completely different thing. And if those dashboards end up being public or embedded, you can see that somebody else designed those ones. So we want to keep them uniform. So the best, I think, process that we will recommend for that is to keep a template. The developers can make a copy and then just update a few things in regards to the information.
That's actually a very...
Go on, sorry.
Sorry, Rob, carry on.
I was just going to say, and even if you don't actually have a template where you literally copy and paste, actually just having a style in mind is really important. So that
yes,
your dashboards end up having a house look and feel to them, so that as Ramiro was saying, you can recognize them as something that has been developed by your developers or your business people, rather than something that's just been sourced from outside. That really helps.
There is such a thing as muscle memory for using computers. Like if you I don't know whether you ever do it. I'm a little bit weird. So when I go to the grocery store, I have a habit of picking up a tin and like a tin of baked beans or something like that. And as I walk around the grocery store, I throw it in my hand and catch it. And I do it. I know this can make me sound crazy, right? And I probably am, but I do it without looking at the tin, and my brain manages to catch the tin all the time. I do it because it kind of helps me focus. I don't know why, but it does. And my muscle memory can catch that tin. And the same thing happens with computers, and actually in all sorts of walks of life. As a UI designer, the god of UI design, and actually almost any design, is a guy called Don Norman. And he wrote a book called The Design of Everyday Things, and it was originally called The Psychology of Everyday Things, and people kept abbreviating it to POET. So I just, well, I love that, the fact. But he has a muscle memory thing named after him called the Norman Door. Not Normans as in the people that invaded the UK and built lots of churches and made us have to learn about them in history lessons, but Norman as in Don Norman. And it's a door. You've all done it. You've gone up to a door in a grocery store, a fashion boutique, because obviously you all go and shop at some fashion store or something like that, because you're all followers of fashion, but the kind of boutique-y styles where they have these big glass doors and they have a handle on the door, and it's usually a big long one, and you go to pull the handle and the door doesn't open, and someone else comes along and they know the store and they push the door and the door opens inwards. And that is what's known as a Norman door. The reason is you have been muscle memory trained over a period of time to expect a handle like that to be something that you would pull. If it was a flat plate, then you would push it. And in fact, Don Norman influenced lots of things, including what happens with a fire exit. In Europe and the UK, you'll find that fire exits have a big metal plate on them, and it literally is designed that you think to push it. Because when you're escaping a building, the last thing you want to do is waste time going, why won't the door open? And you don't know that actually you should push it because you're panicking and pulling. With a flat plate, you'll push it. Now, why does that matter about graphic design and dashboard design? The reason is that, as Maria said, which is quite important, is the idea of templates. If you have a company ideal dashboard style, your users become kind of trained to understand what that data means. And so this chart here has got a specific purpose. That chart here has got a specific purpose, and the layout tends to be the same. So when you've got quite a bit of information on the screen as well, it also means that they know where to look. You are educating your users on user interface design. That's why Windows is very effective. It's a repeated mechanism, the same as Mac. Any Windows user that started using the Mac, the first thing they do is go, where's the Windows minimize button, because it's over on the left. The Mac users go and use a Windows machine and it's over on the right, and it's confusing. So, but the dashboard templates are actually the same thing as well. Training your users, consistency is very important, because there's a book called Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug, another design book. Don't make me think. In other words, the speed of being able to absorb the information on a dashboard or something like that, you should not have to make them think about how to look for that information. If they've got a repeated template or something like that, you're helping take some of that cognitive load away from them having to think about, where do I find that information that I need. So it's an underrated thing in user interface design, is familiarity. Looking the same as everybody else, as long as it makes sense to look the same as everybody else.
Yeah, and we were talking about legends earlier. On the doors now that says push or pull, so that's kind of a,
which is great if you can read.
Sure.
or the language that it says it in, you understand. If you go to China and it says push or pull, I don't know about you, but I don't read any Chinese characters whatsoever. So that's why I won't have any tattoos with it on.
That's a good point, because when that happens, is that the design is not very intuitive, so you don't know if we need to pull or push, and it needs to be a little bit more obvious.
And if it also, if it is smoky, because the building's on fire and it's a fire exit, so something that you really need to get to grips with straight away. Your muscle memory is what will help make it quicker for you to get through that exit. That's why you have a big bar on most fire exits. You know where that is. It's at waist height. It's easy to reach. A child can reach it. It's deliberately,
and it's labeled.
And
it's labeled, yeah.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't need to be, because it's a fire exit, and your muscle memory has been trained. There's a bar there. That's how to get out. Now, I'm not saying you don't label, your grass with a legend and things like that, but trying to reduce the cognitive load is important. Should we go to the next slide? Maria's on.
Yes. Let's go to the next one. And we can talk about a little bit more about this one. So this one, and if you're interested, there's more examples in the Yellowfin website with some very nice dashboard galleries ideas. So this is an example of a well-structured dashboard, of course. It's showing just a few colors, and all these colors are consistent across the KPIs and the charts. So they have a meaning, and we are not overusing them. As well, we can notice that we have filters. That means that we are not trying to put all the information there, and the user can interact with these filters in order to have different slices of the data. Also, we have in this dashboard, the visuals are minimal, so we are not having more than 9 visuals over here, so we're not really overloading the user with a lot of information. So I guess that's a better design, and we are using some subtabs to just divide the information in a more business kind of related way. So yeah, you can clearly see some differences of both designs and what we are aiming to have.
Yeah, so it still imparts the same information. It just does it in a clearer way. It's less busy, and also the layout and the way that the labels are at the top. You've used graphics, but you've not overused graphics.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, that's the key thing. There's a very big temptation. I get this all the time when people talk about user interfaces. When you're talking to someone who's not specialized in that, and they'll say, you know, it's the guy that signs the checks, basically, and he's saying, oh, I want my program to be updated. And you say, okay, fine. What are you looking for? I just want it to look modern. And you say, well, what do you mean by you want it to look modern? And they will show you stuff that looks pretty to them, and they're missing the point about what modern should be. Modern actually quite often will be like this one on the left here, which you could argue is quite minimalist. The amount of information on there is reduced compared to the screen that we had before, but it's more effective. You know, it's I mean, I'd probably question the use of the yellow in the middle, but that's me being a UI designer there. But apart from that, you know, it's easily digestible, and this is what you're looking for when you're looking on charts and graphs and things like that. Yes, the design of the chart, the type of the chart, stacked bar, pie charts. What was the one that you came up with, Rob? Or was it Rob or Montana? One of you mentioned some weird line thing.
Box split.
Yeah, it was something odd, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I've never heard of that chart, but I believe you if you say it exists, it exists. But
this is akin to Apple, right? Well, I feel like this is akin to Apple, where it's like it's very minimalistic, but they get a lot of information within that minimalistic type view.
There's
what you really need to know about it. And
anybody that wants to learn a bit about design, there's a movie, or it's actually a documentary called Objectified, and it interviews some very well-known designers. Dieter Rams, Johnny Ive is on there, and there's a very important scene there, I think, for designers when we're talking about minimalism. I don't want to lift my Mac up, it's just down here, but he shows the power indicator on the side of the Mac. So the Mac is open and the power indicator is not visible. And the reason is you can see the Mac is on because the screen is open and there's something on the screen display. When you close the Mac lid, the power indicator comes on and it shines through the aluminum or aluminium, depending on which countryside we want to pick. I still say aluminium. It's not aluminum, but it shines through because they've got micro holes drilled, and the power light shines through. It's green, and he said they argued over the particular shade of green for a long time, but it also pulses like this. So the power indicator, when it's sleeping, pulses. And the reason it pulses like that is it's at the speed of a resting heartbeat. Now, that's very obsessive design, but two important things there. He didn't show the indicator when it wasn't essential to show the indicator. When the Mac is open, you can tell it's working. Why show the power light? It's irrelevant. But when you close it, you want to know, is it still powered up? Is it asleep, or is it what? And the sleep indicator subtly says to you, my Mac is asleep. That is an example of how Apple really does lead the way in design. I mean, liquid glass is something horrendous and I hate it, which is the new current Mac interface. But when it comes to this, I would say that the left-hand screen there is very Mac-like, and probably the right-hand screen as well. It's also very Apple-inspired design, minimalist. You're looking at information where it's not cluttering page like that Hazard Now website, which is beautiful, but overwhelming amount of information shown in a way that probably could be redesigned to be much more easily digestible and more rapidly digestible than it's there.
I just want to take this time and thank Ian for calling out liquid glass.
Oh, it's horrible. I mean, and the new version of iOS says, we've listened to your feedback. It's their way of saying, okay, everybody hated what we did, so we're changing away the corners of the screen, Fran. But we digress, because otherwise it'll be a bashing people about liquid glass thing. But I'm a UI designer. You don't expect me to think liquid glass is good, because it's not. Anyway, so let's, whilst we're on the subject of green flashing things, should we go on to colors and comparisons? I suspect this is written by Rob or Steve, because the rest of us on this webinar would spell color correctly with just one vowel after the L and drop the U's. But color with a purpose, using color layout and visual design. And I think that kind of, Maria, those are your examples, right? The ones that you showed on the previous slides. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everything is kind of linked together, because yes, to be able to give a good narrative, a story for that,
I mean,
we need to be consistent with things.
Yeah.
So that's why our next topic was the colors, with the and storytelling, of course. So as we were saying, to keep it consistent, to have meaningful, or to be part of the color palette of color scheme of your company. And actually, Yellowfin, to make it easy, Yellowfin has a specific color palette that it could apply to basically the entire system, or if you have like a multi-tenancy system, could be applied to each tenant. So it makes it very easy to just reuse it and not being able to be setting that up in every single visualization. And as well has something called reference codes, where you can do something similar. You can set up the value and a color for that specific value. So you can reuse it and everybody keep it consistent on this one.
I'm laughing because Stephen Ball is in the chat window, even though he's not joined us, and he's just trying to emphasize that he spelt color correctly.
Yes, quite right.
Just boot him from the chat room, please.
Agree with me that it's not. There you go. Yeah, color with a purpose. You might think it's kind of a frivolous thing to say that colors wouldn't have a purpose, but I had one company I worked at where the software went out to some. It was in the late 90s, early 2000s. So at that point, you still had plenty of people who were not really familiar with computers. They used them because their job required them to, but it wasn't. They didn't have one at home. It wasn't as common for people to have one at home. And we had these users making support calls and saying that they were trapped in the application. They couldn't get out the application, and then they would say, "Oh, yeah, it's not that. It's just that whenever I try and save any information, it's not saving my data." And we're like, oh, I don't understand that. Why is it losing the data? So we started looking at the database server. Is it a database server? Looking at the logs. And then we went to the customer. You couldn't remote in those days. We actually physically went to the customer and said, show us using the program. And the screen that they were talking about where they entered this data, and first of all, they were trapped, it had one button on it, only one button. And the button was colored red. And the button said close. And the idea was that it would close the application and save the data. But what they were doing is the button was in a weird place, and they would clicking the cross in the top right-hand corner because it looked like a dialogue. And so they were closing the dialogue, which was not saving the data. I didn't design that screen, by the way. But again, it's down to if something is an affirmative action, like a stop button, or is not affirmative, it is a kind of danger, Will Robinson, then you color it red if it's a stop or a cancel or something like that. But if it's an affirmative action, then you tend to color, either have the color with a tick on it, a green tick or something like that, or a button that actually says save, or it's green, because people associate green with go, do something, and red with stop. So never do a close button or save button as red. I don't know who thought that was a design choice, but color with a purpose is actually, it's not a joke. There is actually, you know, you have to take into account the psychology of what you're doing as well. Don't go against the grain. Don't put in bad figures in green, for example. If
don't rely on it too much, because obviously there are people who can't see green and can't see it.
Very true, very true.
A very good example. My father-in-law is actually he's got the weirdest thing. He's got a red-green color blindness, and he was an engineer. So wiring plugs up is always a very fascinating thing in the United States. But luckily, they mostly use red and black. But it is something where you do, you know, red and green. You're quite right for calling me out on that. But again, you have to take that into account when you're talking about colors and things like that. And actually, the next slide is very good, I think. And Maria, is this your graphic, or is that someone else's?
No,
I believe that was Stephen.
that was me, actually.
Stephen, he's not here.
Yeah.
I don't
Good job,
really
good
But I
job,
mean,
Stephen.
he you know, we don't want to be nice about Stephen. He's not here. We use the opportunity to be rude about him, but
he's listening.
but I think it's.
But that's a good example, because yes, it's like in the first one we are just using all these kind of colors that are not really communicating anything, and the second one is just easy to just identify. And as well, both are okay in terms of how we order the data. That's another point of how to design. We always need to organize the data from highest to lowest, or the other way around, to just identify which one is doing better or not. Of course, that's not the case in time series data, but in most of the charts that have categories. So yes, this is a really good example.
On the left as well, the weirdest thing is the legend at the bottom says product sold, okay, for the x-axis, but the Poland, which is at the top, the bar is red, and you think, is that dangerous?
Yes.
What is that bad? We've sold a lot in Poland. You know, we should really fix that and sell less. You know, again, it's about that kind of muscle memory in terms of colors. The fact that the lower sales are in green is a very questionable choice of color scheme.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you wouldn't really. I mean, or you could say shades of grey, depending on whether you are colorblind or not. But I think most people, and Stephen's now trying to justify himself. The images were added by Rob, he said. Rob is calling me out.
Oh,
it's your fault.
I'm so sorry, Rob.
Yeah,
It was definitely chosen for exactly the reason that you're
I
making
do
it.
see this. Stephen is putting the blame on Rob.
He said, "I think
the brain will always look for a pattern, even if there isn't one." So it's trying to we're looking at it, trying to explain the colors, and there just isn't one. It's just picked the colors because that's what the color palette was for the BI tool.
And we are creatures of habit, you know, and like the throwing of the tin in the air, you know, because I know I'm weird. I even have a sign that says I say weird stuff there, but I know I'm weird. But that is just, for me, it helps me think about. I don't know, it distracts me physically by throwing this tin of baked beans in my hand, and it goes into almost everything you can think of: the red stop button, the green go button, the colors that you choose. And yes, you know, easier to interpret is a good thing. And again, another thing, as Stephen says here, because I assume it's Stephen, right? Consistency is key. So most important info, top left. Because and actually this is a bit of a kind of domain bias here. Information top left only works if you're not Japanese, for example, or some other country that is looking right to left. If you've ever got one of these graphic novels, Montana, you look like the kind of guy that would probably read the kind of no. Yeah.
No, I know what you're talking. Yeah, you read right to left.
Yeah, the graphic novel is very confusing. They're cool, you know, like I forget what the ones is, like Blade or something, some sword thing.
Right,
but,
yeah, that is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're see, I'm showing how much of a nerd I am, even at my age. But they because they're mostly produced in Japan, The books, you actually read them right to left. They're in English, and the images are drawn the opposite way as well. So most important info top left, as long as your target audience are also expecting that. Otherwise, you're going to completely confuse them because it's the reverse to what they're expecting. To be fair, you generally know because it's either English or it's not. And, but even so, even if if English is a good language, they can read and write it. It might not be their first language, and you know, you have to take these kind of cultural norms into account as well. Japanese would not be.
I mean, even in Farsi, they have something called the RTL, which is the
right to left.
But there's 3 actual steps you have to do to actually comprehend Farsi. So again, it's just one of those things. Yeah, it just depends, and that's a good point where you are in the world.
And I think, given that we're talking in English, we're probably mostly at least a language. You know, the Europeans are probably understanding what we say, even if there's subtitles at the bottom of the screen. If you subscribe to YouTube, you will get subtitles as well, because that's how it works. But yeah, it's a good point, you know, consistent color and things like that. I keep reaching over here because my Mac's over here and I can see what's coming up on the slides. So that's why I'm being weird. My Mac Magic Pad is just on my desk, but that doesn't work the same way. So yeah, minimal use of color, consistent font sizes. Well, I could probably criticize his board, but you know, he's in the chat and he'll probably come back and moan at me later if I say nasty things about his choice of font size and spacing. White space is a user element as well. You know, space around things, like here, for example, the spacing between these. Yes, I agree with what he's saying, but I would probably put something between these, even if it's a shading or something like that, and drop it down a bit, because yes, these are easily understandable, but does the 99% apply to this last 7 days? If not, if these 3 things here are separate to this last 7 days thing, then add some extra white space here and move these down a little bit. That's how I would do it, just to say, by the way, the 99% and the last 7 days are not related to each other.
At the end, the 150 and the 5, the space between those 2 must be really bothering you, because I can, from a user interface person as well.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's not bothering me at all. So what else can we say about Stephen's graphic that's not?
No, I think it's great.
Yeah, it is good, and it you know, it makes the point. And we're going to rush through. We've kind of gone over the hour already, but hey, it is what it is. Don't drown in detail. Again, that really, I think, is fairly obvious. We've talked a little bit about that. We showed the has now screen where it really is drowning in detail. Unfortunately, I think it's a great idea. I don't want to knock them too badly. I'm sorry I'm picking on them, but you know, it's a public site. It is what it is. But don't drown in detail. Simplicity wins. Matching charts to the question you're trying to answer, and that's really the most important thing, isn't it, about infographics and stuff like that, is they're there for a reason. They're not there just to look good. You know, they're trying to impart some information, and if you are not successful in imparting the information in a way that people can absorb, you've failed. You know, you've failed at what you're doing. You've got to answer the question, and reducing clutter, etc. So, whose slide is this?
Guilty as charged.
Go for it, Rob.
So really, I mean, this one's just talking about examples where what happens if you're trying to put your chart together and you start with the chart on the left. You think, yeah, that's quite nice. I can see that, but what's it really telling you when you look at that? You've got like 4 or 5 chart lines going up and a couple coming down, but it's like not really sure what's going on. So as the person designing the chart, I knew what I wanted to say, and what I wanted to say was, look, I'm really interested in what's happening with environmentally friendly vehicles in terms of, you know, the shift towards electric vehicles and so on. So you can adjust the chart by grouping together the different. It's all a bit small on this version, but you know, it's the fuel types, and you can build effectively build a little hierarchy in Yellowfin on the fly as the chart designer. So that's what that's showing is you open up a technical called group data, and within group data you can create buckets that you want to chuck the dimension values into. So that's what we've got here. We've got eco-friendly, traditional, and then other. I don't even know what other is. I'm not sure what that fuel type is. It's in the data set, so it's there, and it's actually really small, as you can see on the right-hand side. It's a kind of chart just kind of bumping along the bottom of the axis. So yeah, not
other I'm sure is the stuff that you put in the DeLorean in Back to the Future that makes it do 1.21 gigawatts or whatever it is.
Could be, or it might just be gas or something. But
like a load of kitchen scraps or something like that, and it turns it into a nuclear power somehow. Yeah. So,
but the key point there is just saying, if you've got too many values and you want to make the chart a bit easier to understand, group the values together, and that could either be done, in the report using the group data option, or potentially go back a step and think about whether you can create a hierarchy within your dimension. So you might have built within the dimension, you might have actually defined a drill hierarchy, perhaps through from traditional fuels down to petrol and diesel, and another one down from eco-friendly to all the different eco-friendly fuel types. So it's up to you how you do that in conjunction with your data engineers and so on. But yeah, there's some good options there. If you do go the route of doing it as a drill hierarchy, then obviously you've got the benefit. You could potentially drill into the line and open up a new, open up a whole bunch of different lines. But then you've got that extra context, so it becomes clearer what it means.
We're actually we use Yellowfin in Idera. Idera is the parent company, and I had to give some details to someone the other day about some downloads of Kai, our new AI product that works with Rad Studio, and it was for marketing. They wanted to know, has it been a success? And the answer is, by the way, a resounding success. And we use Yellowfin to do it, and actually. The charts that have been designed were very, very good, but I was able to drill down to some information as well. Yellowfin is, the more you learn about Yellowfin, the more you think, wow, this is actually pretty good. It has got all the things you could ever want for a business intelligence product and more. I mean, I love the stories feature. That is my, I think that if you're someone that has to produce a weekly report, and in fact there's several people in Idera that do have to do that, a kind of round robin report that goes out to people and says, here's the current state of play for the business or the market that we're in. Sometimes it's competitive analysis. Here's our product versus a new announcement from a competitor. Where do we stack up? And statistics and things like that. Yellowfin Stories is very good for that kind of stuff. When someone says, produce me a report and a blog post, and off you go. You can use stories to do that. I like that. And the triggers part of it. It's great. Anyway, I'm sounding a bit like a salesperson now, and I'm definitely not. But by the way, whilst we're talking about sales, if you want to, if you scan that QR code that's in the top left-hand corner there, it'll take you to our sandbox. And if you go on there, you don't need to take our word for it about Yellowfin. You can actually go and have a play with it yourself. You need to set up a login. The information's wiped out on a regular basis, so whatever you put in there, you shouldn't put private information in, but it gets wiped out anyway on a regular basis. It's there for you to play with, so have a play with it and see what you get out of it. And if not, go to yellowfinbi.com and see more about what's going on. So dimension trimming,
it's kind of the same thing, but where the previous slide was talking about looking at a time series chart. If you're looking at what I would call a categorical chart, where you're looking at the values of a non-time dimension, in this case, we've all seen the first thing where you're exploring the data and you look at a chart like the one on the left, you think, oh my God, what's that? What a mess.
Eyelash chart. That's a false eyelash chart.
and you've got several options as to what you can do with that. I mean, you could take the same approach as you'd on the previous one. You could look at either dimension, introducing a hierarchy, and it's effectively charting the next level up of the hierarchy, or you can group the data, or you can do what we've got on this chart, which is to say, well, you know what? all those things over on the right, all that dense blackness is just things that didn't sell very much. I'm not really very interested in them. So let's just look at the top 10. And that's something you can do within the chart builder within Yellowfin. Just it's called dimension trimming. And you just say how many of the values you want to keep. So you can go for the top 10, the bottom 10, whatever it is you want to see. You can bucket everything else into an other if you want. That's the option at the bottom there, which we haven't chosen in this case. Sometimes that's a good thing to do. Sometimes it's it results in a super spike, which just makes your chart a bit harder to read. So explore the options and see what works for you. Just one thing before we. So in terms of what works for you. There are different use cases. If you're going for a dashboard, it's something that you're going to see week after week, most likely. So trying to cover all the bases is probably a good idea. In that case, I wouldn't lump all the other things into an unpredictably sized bucket. I would just stick with the top 10 and see what that is. If it's a one-off piece of analysis and turning it on shows you something useful, by all means include it. But they're quite different use cases. So you have to think about, well, how will this chart look with data maybe at your busiest sales time of year and your quietest sales time of year? Is it still going to be useful and convey the message you want? Whereas if you're building a story, just saying, well, this is how it was last week, well, that's not going to change most probably. So you can just go with the chart as it is and think about maybe using some different chart types for what I would probably think of as static reporting rather than.
And there's a whole bunch of different chart types as well. I mean, you're spoiled for choice in Yellowfin. It's not like, well, there's 3 types of pie charts and a couple of bar charts or something. No. Oh, boy. There's like heat graphs and every kind of thing you could possibly want. If there's a dimension that you need to visualize, I guarantee there's a chart type there that will do it. And actually, each of those chart types is really customizable as well. So it's, I love it. I say this often, I represent quite a few idea brands, but I only talk about the ones I actually believe in, and because I can't sit here and say nice things about something. I'm not that much of a hypocrite. I can't say that many nice things about something if I don't believe in it. But Yellowfin I like. I think it's a great product. It's not difficult for me to be enthusiastic about it because I am, and it's a good thing. So we're going to skip over this slide because we're kind of wrapping up anyway. The important slide is this one, and it's because of the graphic on it. And that is Montana with his lightsaber. Wow. Maria, where's your lightsaber? We fouled you horribly, I think, there, haven't we? We
spent the whole time saying how bad the color red was, so thank you.
Yeah, we all know that's evil, right? The good guys don't have lightsabers that are red lightsabers.
Right.
So yeah, well, I think there's going to be a lot of jokes about someone being your father and stuff like that. That's got to be the case, and we've got to make sounds and lots of those kind of breathing sounds.
Again, I have my mixing board ready for this one, so
so that's the next session. It's going to be a lot of fun. Welcome to the darker side. Darker brew. That was what we were going to go for. We do have an endless number of coffee puns at our disposal. We've thought very hard about this. So each week we're here same time as right now. So an hour and 15 minutes ago is when we started. If you're just catching the end of this, if you want to subscribe to us on YouTube, it is not. None of us get any special badges or anything like that. Unfortunately, I don't think we get one of those nice plaques that YouTube give out, and we certainly don't get any. Let me just get the right one up. That one. We certainly don't get any, glass things with the play buttons on from YouTube. But if you are watching on YouTube, and great, I'm glad you are. Let me just pull up the right thing. Sorry, I've got another thing here. It's a bit of a handful, but go to youtube.com/@yellowfinbi-official. We do have one which is yellowfinbi, but for reasons that will remain secret, we actually have to have a different channel. It's just to do with the technicalities of when Idea took over. But if you're watching us on YouTube, click on the subscribe button and preferably on the like button. We don't really care about the likes, but what it means is if there's someone out there that resembles you according to the algorithm, then at some point this channel will be recommended to them. We won't know who you are if you subscribe. We won't be able to spam you. It's a completely safe way of keeping up to date with what's happening. But at least then, if you do want to join us live, and we do, you know, we are broadcasting this live to various events. I think LinkedIn and YouTube and a few others as well. You can chat to us in the chat window if you've got something you need to know about and to do with BI, business intelligence, or Yellowfin. Ask in the box. You've got the expert sitting there. Well, I'm not the expert, but you've got the expert sitting there. Maria knows their stuff like anybody. Montana is a super duper. I'll get everything set up and running for you kind of guy. And Rob, as we've already noticed, is like the Yoda, to use a Star Wars metaphor, is the Yoda of Yellowfin and business intelligence. He has the all the answers, isn't that right? Yeah.
Dr. Jones, he always has the prescription.
Well, that's a different movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about Maria, whether Maria's into Star Wars, but as everybody can tell from my background here, I'm a Star Trek guy, so Star Wars. But I'll go with it. I do have a R2D2 up there above me as well, so I guess I'm not that. But I'll just hide this particular caption because we're going to call it a day. But there you see all of our ways of getting hold of us: LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the rest of us. And then, like I say, if you scan that QR code as well, you can get taken directly to the page. And I think that's it, isn't it, everyone? I guess we are done until next week. Thanks very much to Rob and his encyclopedic knowledge of all things wonderful. Thanks, Rob.
All things wonderful. We'll have to have a different webinar on that, but
Very Mary Poppins reference, really, isn't it? It's all things wonderful, tied up with string or something like that. And Montana, who has the most American name you could possibly ever have, and he's wearing his cap.
Thank you.
What's the cap say on front of it?
Burger Lords. It's a vegan burger place that it's weird. All my clothes I buy from like these niche restaurants when I go to like LA and stuff. So it's like they look cool, but it's like what brand is that? It's like, oh, it's actually a restaurant. Actually, I don't.
And now people know you live in California because you've just basically. This is how you know. Yeah. Can you tell he lives in California? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would love to live in California, but I'd need to sell 2 kidneys and a lung before I can actually afford to move down there and live there. It's a very expensive place, depending on where you live. But where I would want to live would be ridiculously expensive. They're all billionaires. So, and Maria, who doesn't live in California and therefore doesn't have a vegan hat on, thanks to you as well.
Sure.
Yeah, you're based in Ohio, which is slightly more sedate and sensible place.
Oh, a lot more, yeah.
Yeah, and Stephen's saying that it was a Sound of Music reference that I made as well. Oh, we should all go around and talk about jumping in paintings or something like that, or whatever she did. Wasn't it chalk paintings or Step in Time, Mary Poppins? I remember that bit. So yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.